Welcome to another edition of Tampa Bay Insiders. Today we're going to be talking with former Mayor Sandy Freedman and hear her thoughts about what's going on in the city and what we ought to all be looking at. Sandy, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being on.
Thanks, Louise.
Sandy, first, I wanted to get a little bit of your history for folks who don't know it. You're not born in Tampa, right?
No, I was born in New Jersey, but I've lived here since I was 3 years old, so I'm pretty close to a native.
Pretty close. So did you go to schools down here?
Yeah, went to all the local schools, Gorey Wilson Plant, and then went off to college after that.
Where'd you go?
To college?
Yeah.
I went to the University of Georgia first for a year, and then I went to the University of Miami.
What did you major in?
Well, when I went off to college, I was a pretty good tennis player, and that's the reason I went to Georgia, because they had a good tennis team. And then I transferred to Miami because they had a better tennis team. But I majored in government, and that's what I have a degree in state and local government.
Oh, I didn't realize that. From Miami?
From the University of Miami, yeah.
After getting out of college, did you come back to Tampa?
Mm-hmm, I did.
And how did you get involved? What did you get involved in? Did you?
Well, I actually had a teacher in the 6th grade at Gorey Elementary School who got me really interested in current events. We had to bring in current events every day and talk about them, unlike what the kids do today. And I was always interested in government as a result of that. So I always had hopes of going into local government when I came back to Tampa.
And how did you enter into the government field? For people who might be interested in doing the same thing, following your footsteps? Or?
Well, I had been a volunteer in probably a dozen campaigns when I was in Miami, and it was part of our curriculum too. We had to do that. And when I came back here, I started stuffing envelopes, actually when I was 16, for Leroy Collins when he ran for governor. So I continued that kind of activism, and then I got involved in the community and volunteering and some civic affairs, and one thing led to another, and I always expected I would run for the city council, and had that opportunity in 1974.
And you ran and you won first time out?
I ran and I won the first time out, and the following year it was an unexpired term. There was a special election, and the following year I won again, and then I won several times after that, and I was on the city council for 12 years and was the chairman of the city council for the last 3 of those years, and then I became the mayor.
And you became the mayor because our mayor left to run for
the
governor?
The present mayor at that time, Bob Martinez, resigned to run for governor, and he became the governor. He was elected governor, and the chairman of the city council automatically became the mayor. And that lasted for about 9 months before the next election. And then I won that election, and then 4 years later again.
So you were mayor for
almost
9 years?
9 years, almost 9 years.
Wow. What do you think, I guess, were the important things that you got to accomplish while you were mayor?
Oh, I think we did a lot of good things. It was challenging times, not unlike today. Economic times were tough. We had 2 recessions while I was the mayor. So we created some very innovative programs. We created a housing program that provided low-income people and elderly people affordable housing with fixed-up homes, new construction, renovated construction. Probably helped, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 people during that time with the housing program. It's called the Challenge Fund.
Was that generated by the city, or was that state money, or
no?
National?
That was generated by the city, and it was a combination of, we put the banks and the city and the nonprofits together. And as a result of that combination, we used federal dollars that came to the city to backstop the loans that were made to these individuals, low interest rate loans at a long term, so that they could pay them off. And then we had the nonprofits not only providing the housing, sometimes new construction, sometimes renovation, but also we had nonprofits who were training the homeowners in their everyday living so that they didn't spend too much of their money on one thing or another and could be able to pay back the loans.
So some kind of budget programs or education on how to
a lot of
budget.
education for people.
Is that kind of prompting you to think about today, where they're now asking for freezing on any of these foreclosures and trying to help people go on and get themselves better organized again so they don't lose their homes.
The government needs to help educate people that they can't spend too much money on their home initially, and they have to budget properly. And there are an awful lot of people, believe it or not, who don't know how to do that. And government never helps in doing that. We did that during that time. I think that's why it was so successful. Government still needs to do that. And housing, affordable housing, is one of the critical needs all across America. And we haven't really done very much as a country in providing affordable housing. Pockets here, pockets there, but not really affordable housing for most Americans.
And I think some of the problems really been the banks and the extension of credit that has been beyond belief.
Well, and if people don't have to put anything down and they don't have to invest in that, then
they're paying interest only for a period of time, then it gets hit, and then they're just
and
dead.
that's the education part of it again. A lot of people went into it and would still go into it if they had the opportunity without knowing what's going to come down the road. It looks good, and all of a sudden, boom, they get hit and they're out on the street.
While you were mayor, I recollect this when we had, the aquarium, the convention center?
We had a lot of building when I was the mayor. I finished the
Convention center?
No, the Tampa Bay Performing Arts Center.
Oh, wow.
It started under Bob Martinez. It got into trouble. We had trouble with the contractors and everything. I guess the last couple of years of the construction were on my watch, and we finally got that taken care of, and it went on its way. And then I built my administration built the convention center, and it's still to this day the only major government building that's ever been built on time and on budget.
Wow.
Actually came in slightly under the budget, but we watched it every week, which is what you'll have to do, whatever you're building. And then we started the aquarium, and we also started the forum, or whatever it's called today.
Yes.
The arena, where the Lightning play.
I still like to call it the Ice Palace.
I call it the Ice Palace,
that
too.
was the best name for it,
Yeah.
although, and I apologize to St. Pete Times, but I can't help that.
Yeah.
I just think Ice Palace makes sense.
And that's why I call it the forum now, because that's in between everything.
Yeah, that's a good one. But also, I recollect you're taking a very strong position on our neighborhoods and our drug houses and things like that. And do you want to explain what you did with regard to that?
When I first became the mayor, crack cocaine was just starting to come into vogue, and neighborhoods were getting hit very hard. I mean, we had a very high rate of crime as a result of drug usage. We didn't have very many people in the police department, not nearly what we needed. So during the time I was the mayor, we added over 100 people in the police department. We've decided, one of the very first things I decided, even before I became the mayor, is that we really had to get involved in neighborhoods. We weren't paying any attention to the people who made up the city. And as a result of that, we started the neighborhood office in the mayor's office. Steve Labor was the first neighborhood liaison, and we worked with neighborhoods. We helped them develop, we helped them grow. When I left office, there were we started with only about, maybe 15 or 20 neighborhood groups, organized neighborhood groups. When I left, there were well over 50. Now they're close to 100. It's continued to grow, and neighborhood activism is something that I really feel, to this day, I feel very strongly about it. That's what makes good communities, solid communities.
Well, the destruction of the drug houses, how did that come about? I just kind of really remember that was a well-covered event.
We didn't have any money. That was a time when one of the first recession. We didn't have any money, but we had all of these rundown houses that were crack houses. Crack dealers and crack users would go in, and they'd be run down and in disrepair and boarded up, and they'd go in and use them, and then there'd be a fire, and somebody would get hurt, and things like that.
They were owned by the city, these houses?
No, these were not owned by the city. But the owners didn't take care of them or anything, and so the city had to do something, and all the neighborhoods all over the city were complaining about these rundown houses that were being used as crack houses. So they came to me and they said, please do something. And the only thing we could do with them was to have code enforcement go after them, and then we'd foreclose on them, and we'd take them over, and then we didn't have any way to get rid of them because there they were, but it was expensive to demolish them. So I asked Kimmons Corporation if they would help us for nothing to demolish these crack houses, and we would use the house, once it was demolished, as a training site for the fire department. They'd burn the house, they'd train, and that way we'd get rid of the house, we'd have a useful purpose. And so on the very first day, we bulldozed the house, and I got on the backhoe and the bulldozer and knocked down the houses, and we knocked down houses all over the community that benefited the neighborhood so that they didn't have to deal with these crack houses. And they would, I could still remember people standing out applauding because they were finally getting rid of this eyesore that was being used for illicit purposes.
Did you also help with the starting out of the Paint Your Heart Out too?
Yeah.
Was that one of your,
you want
to explain that one?
When you don't have any money, there's a necessity to do things and ask people to help.
Be creative.
Yeah.
Very creative.
And so we had heard about this program. I didn't create it. One of the people who worked for the city in code enforcement, Joe Husky, came to me and said he'd heard about this program in Pittsburgh called Paint Your Heart Out Pittsburgh. And could we take a look at this video? And we looked at the video and we said, wow, that's really terrific. They were going to paint the homes of low-income senior citizens and help those people who couldn't help themselves. And so we got this group together, and they thought I was crazy. One of the many times they thought I was crazy. And they said, we said, well, we need paint. So we went to some of the paint distributors, and we said, would you give us paint? And they said, sure. And we said to the homeowner, would you like to pick the color of your paint? We have green, we have blue, we have pink. They would give us different colors, and they picked the color of their paint. And then we went to the union, the painters union, and said, well, we don't know how to paint. We've got a lot of volunteers who will help us paint, but we need painters, professional painters. So each house had a professional painter, donated his time, and he would paint. And then we went to Corona Brush Company, some friends of mine, and I said, would you give us the brushes? Now we have to have the brushes, and they gave us the brushes. And one thing led to another. We had all this volunteer help and all this volunteer. We never paid for anything. The only thing I think we paid for is Krispy Kreme donated the donuts. That Saturday morning in April, when we would paint the houses, and we painted over 100 houses each year. It's still going on now, over 20 years ago. In April, I would go from, not to every house because I couldn't get to, but I would go and thank the people painting, the workers, and say hello to the homeowner and everything. And they were senior citizens, many of whom were disabled. And they would just, they didn't know what to say. They were so thrilled. And then everybody would kind of adopt that house, the people who worked at it. It was an extraordinary public outpouring. And they would plant a tree, and they would plant landscape, and then they would come back at Christmas, and they would bring a TV set. And the companies and the people who participated had never felt so good. So we did these kind of crazy things because it was out of necessity, because we couldn't help it, because we had no money.
Were those things like the demolishing of the crack houses and the Paint Your Heart? Is that one? Are those the reasons that we got the award that year from the National Civic League? Or were there others?
In 1990, we applied to the National Civic League for the All-America City Award. Each year, and this coming year will be the 60th year, 10 communities around the country are selected as All-American cities. It's like the Oscars for a city. And you have to submit 3 programs. And the 3 programs that we submitted were Paint Your Heart Out, the Quad Squad, which is another program in the police department that went out and really got rid of the drug dealing. And it was in cooperation with neighborhoods. And then there was a code enforcement project where we educated neighborhood people how to better get their neighborhoods cleaned up without the city stepping in. The neighborhood association would contact the homeowner and say, your site is an eyesore, and would you help clean up? And we got like 80% compliance with that, without the city ever having to step in. And those were the 3 programs that we won on, yeah.
And, well, tell me about the National Civic League. A lot of folks probably have not heard about it, even though it may be awarding cities Oscars and
Yeah.
so forth. But
The National Civic League was founded in 1894 by Teddy Roosevelt and a group of progressives. And it is the oldest citizen democracy-driven organization in the country. It's based in Denver. It has a small staff of really terrific people who do an awful lot with very little. And what they do is they go to communities that request them, or neighborhoods, or regions, or counties, whatever the case may be, and help them solve their problems, whether it's they help with visioning processes, what do we want to be, what's the next 5, 20 years, whatever it might be. They help with problems that they may be dealing with in a community. A number of communities right now are dealing with immigration problems in its neighborhoods. They come in and they open up the dialogue and they help problem solve. But it's citizen driven, and it really is civics lessons, but with assistance from the National Civic League. And they have 3 programs. They have the technical program, which I'm just telling you about, which helps cities. And then they have the All-America City Award, which they sponsor every year, and will be here in Tampa. The presentations will be here in Tampa in June of 2009. And then the third thing that they do is they have the Ambassadors in Education Award, which is given to principals, and this year there will be some teachers as well, in various cities or counties across the country. Hillsborough County is one of those that's been selected for somebody who's really special in education. And they do tremendous work, yeah.
when they do this and they highlight cities, do they, and then other cities can see and share some new programs. I guess this is one of the real big benefits of it, right?
One of the best things is that if you're a member of the National Civic League, and anybody can be a member, and governments can be members and all, you can get the programs of all the winning communities, how they did it, whether it's a healthcare program or whether it's a youth program or whatever. And you can replicate those programs and modify them for your own community.
Because when you apply, you have to put in a lot of detail, I take
Oh,
it.
very deep. It's a very rigorous process. In fact, some communities apply every 5 years just in order to go through the process for their own sake and as a benchmark for how their community is doing and how much progress we made since 5 years ago when we went through the process. It really is quite rigorous.
Now, the event that's coming here in June, can anyone attend that, or
Yes.
and are they looking for volunteers for that, or?
I'm the chairman of the board of the National Civic League right now, and one of the things that I'm hopeful that we'll do here in Tampa is have, not only because it's the 60th anniversary, but because it's here, that we will have not only dozens of volunteers to help those communities. 30 communities come and are the finalists and compete for the 10 All-America
And they don't
City
know they're
things.
going to win
No.
until it's announced.
And the 30 are selected from well over 100 from all across the country.
Okay.
But the 30 communities come, and some communities bring 5 people, and some communities have 25 people. And they tell their stories. They have an allotted period of time, and they tell their stories of how they did these things. And you can come, anyone can come. There's a fee to participate, to watch during the 3 days that these stories are told. And there's a civic fair that all of these 30 communities put on with the best practices at their booth, each booth, of what their city's doing. It's a tremendous educational opportunity.
About how many people come to attend these?
It's hundreds, dependent upon the economy.
Right.
I think there'll probably be more this year because it's the 60th anniversary, and all 500 cities of the last, over 500, of the last 59 years since it began have been invited to come and participate.
Okay.
So there should be quite, yeah, but the economy.
Is that going to be at the convention center?
No, it's
or?
across the street at the Marriott Waterside, and everything will be there. And I suspect that they were looking toward having some major, well-known government people come. Former chairman of the National Civic League, for instance, is Bill Bradley, Senator Bill Bradley, and another one was Henry Cisneros, who's the HUD secretary, and George Gallup was former chairman. Some of those people will be coming back, and some media people who are very involved with the National Civic League, like the columnist Neil Pierce. Neil will probably be here. So you'll have access to all of these people and all of these events during that 3-day.
So as a host city that we are in Tampa, I know I've been involved in a couple of conventions that have come here from our own membership in the professional group of public access people and so forth. As host committee people, we had to get a lot of volunteers to help with hospitality issues and directing people. Are you looking for
Yes,
that too?
we're looking for volunteers to help for.
So someone watching this
yeah.
program, what do they need to do? Do they need to get in touch with you or someone, and how?
First of all, I can leave my number here at the station, and they can call the station.
Okay.
And get in touch with me, and we'd love to have them as volunteers. We'd also love to have people come and see this whole range of programs of what the best things are happening around the country. It's exciting to see these things. It's energizing, and it's a good thing. That's a good kind of stealing. You can steal from what these other communities, just as we did with Paint Your Heart Out, because Pittsburgh had started it. We made it a little bit bigger and better. You can steal from these community programs and modify it for your own community and really do great things.
I got to go to one of their annual conventions. It was in the year 2000. It took place 2 days after Florida's ridiculous 2000 presidential elections, and I'd be embarrassed every time I introduced myself from Florida, and people would just boo, and it was kind of terrible. But the contents of the conference were fabulous.
Yeah.
And what I noticed was most of the folks that were there were the national representatives of a lot of the nonprofits that we have in our own town and elsewhere, United Way or I don't know, Rotary. I can't remember them, but that's who's there. So it's a really good connection with other nonprofits and people.
All of the cities bring almost always their mayor, their Chamber of Commerce leadership, other business leadership, university leadership. It depends upon the programs.
Right.
But there's just a tremendous array of very, very talented people that you can talk to and learn from.
I know that this is a great thing, and I'm glad you're inviting everybody, and we're going to hope that people watch the show and call you and do all that. But you've been able to see, as being a mayor and after that and being involved in this National Civic League, a lot of model programs around the country. And here we are, we're in the city of Tampa, we're faced with an awful, I guess budget cuts are looming,
Every
and
city.
it's awful, looks awful. But what are the things you think that the viewers should keep their eye on, or do you think that we need to really be paying more attention to than others? I know you mentioned housing already as a big issue.
Well, you have to follow the money. Where's the money being spent? That's always the case. Is the money being spent on the core things that a government is created to do? And in the case of the city, I think certainly public safety is a core issue.
Police and
fire. Are the streets, full of potholes and paved or paved? Is the city clean? Because an awful lot of things happen if the city's not clean, believe it or not. I mean, you have
less respect for your
exactly,
area, your
exactly.
neighborhood, right?
It also does all kinds of things to your water supply and things like that. So the basic things, if you look at the things that are being done and you say, wait a minute, I don't know that that's really something so important right now when things are so tight, call up your city council member, call the mayor. If it's in the county, call the county commissioner. Say, wait a minute, I don't think you ought to be doing that right now. You have to look at all those things, and people really have to pay attention.
Speaking of that, calling your representatives, do you think that people do have an impact on their elected officials? Because sometimes
I definitely do.
we feel like they don't.
I definitely do, but that's why I'm such a believer in the neighborhood groups, is because there's strength in numbers. And I still do a little advising on the side to some of the neighborhood groups and all, because they don't realize how much clout they have. I mean, if you have an issue that you disagree with the city on, or you support the city on, and you've got 20, 30, 50 people that come down to the public meeting and the public hearing, that says something about, you know, this is good, this isn't good, or whatever. But that's why, if they're organized, it's much easier to get the word out. You can email the association members, you can call them, you can mobilize them. That's the key to getting things done.
I noticed, I just did a show recently on, I forget what topic it was now. It was a proposal to create setbacks for river properties. But I had a couple of neighborhood associations represented, who were representing people on the river, who owned homes on the river. And I have asked time and time again, and I hope I can do it right now and just insert this in here, and that is to have a neighborhood show on Tampa Bay Community Network, where they rotate neighborhoods. Every week there's a different neighborhood on, and they talk about their you know, their interests, because not everybody's is the same. In one particular neighborhood, it may be river
It's
cleanup.
startlingly different. Yeah. One of the things that we did when I was the mayor, which my staff threw up their hands and said, oh, she's really lost it, is we started what we called the Mayor's Traveling Road Show. I would go out to every neighborhood group at least once a year and take the top 25 or so senior staff people, the head of the water department, the public works department, the parks department, or whatever.
Police?
And police, fire, of course. And they would have to confront the citizens. Oh my God, that was radical those days, you know.
And you found, though, that then those neighborhoods had different issues.
Each neighborhood had a different issue.
Depending on what was going on.
Drastically different.
So we ought to be paying attention, and we ought to be calling our elected officials and letting them know where we think their money should be spent. Our money should be spent.
Absolutely. And at budget time, and when the budget is first developed, which is over the summer in the city and the county, here in Hillsborough County, everybody ought to be watching what's going into those budgets.
Where they're putting it
Where
down.
their money's going, yeah.
I really appreciate your coming and talking to us, and letting people know a little bit about your past and how you got involved in government, and also what we should be looking at. And I wish you great success with the National Civic League Conference that's going to take place in June of 2009. Hope you get 1 million phone calls from people who want to volunteer. Thank you for being here. We'll see you all next time. Thank you.